Hi,
Hello.
I'm Julian,
And I'm Tom.
and we are Team Binge.
Yeehaw!
I'm sorry, you gonna do that because we're doing a vaguely cowboyish show? Is that what we're gonna have to work with?
You're dang right.
You've
We're
gotten
darn tootin'.
you've gotten over your detective stuff, and now you're gonna be Cowboy Tom.
Correct. I'm going to have a character for each series we do.
All right. Well, for those of you joining us, I hope it's not for the first time. If it is, I apologize. We are Team Binge, and we are here to talk about a little show called Outer Range, which is on Amazon Prime right now. I know our MO is to do things on Apple TV Plus, whatever the heck their thing is called. But we decided to branch out because Apple wouldn't give us any money, and Tom doesn't like Apple products. So we're trying a show called Outer Range featuring who, Tom? Who is the main guy who I've grown... I actually realized I've seen him in a bunch of things recently, and I actually really like this guy.
Oh, yeah. Josh Brolin. He is the absolute man. Done all sorts of stuff. Most recently known as the Thanos, No Country for Old Men. Cavalcade of awesome stuff, and fits so well in like a Western type show.
I watched him recently in Sicario. He's great in Sicario.
Ooh, yeah.
And then I also watched him in one of the best movies ever made, Hollow Man, with
right.
Kevin Bacon. Oh, man, that movie's off the rails. But, yeah, so we're giving Outer Range a try. If you haven't watched it, go watch episode 1 and then join us on this hunt. Why we decided to do it, we both watched the first episode. It's got some, like, cool elements. I think it's well done, and we like trying to solve mysteries. Tom solved After Party for us, so this one I'm going to solve, this, like, Stephen King-ish type show.
Well, listen, man, you've always wanted to become a cowboy. You just recently moved into a property that's got some acreage, so I feel like you're just preparing for cowboyhood.
Listen,
it's got the sci-fi elements that keep me entertained.
we're going to have some conversations about what would happen if a giant hole appeared on my property, and I've got some thoughts. The other people in this show, other than Josh Brolin, are Imogen Poots. I hope I'm saying that right. It feels wrong.
Amazing name. Amazing name.
Did you?
You might know her from...
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you might know her from 28 Weeks Later, and then, that amazing classic with Aaron Paul, Need for Speed, based off the video game.
I played the video game.
Role in that.
I've never seen the movie. 28 Weeks Later, she's a child, though, right? That was a long time ago.
I don't know. I don't know what was
Rose
her breakout
Byrne?
role.
Rose Byrne is the doctor in 28 Weeks Later. And 28 Weeks Later is Jeremy Renner, right? Oh, man.
Couldn't
You
tell
brought up the
I don't
movie,
think so.
and have you ever seen it?
Well, yeah, there's 28 Days Later, and 28 Weeks Later is the sequel. So I don't know who's in what, because I think they're
Peaky
completely
Blinders,
different,
the
stories.
Peaky Blinders guy is 28 Days Later. 28 Weeks Later
Cillian
is the
Murphy.
Jeremy Renner, Rose Byrne, and then I think Imogen Poots must be one of the kids, because based on her age in this and how long that movie has been out. Anyways, we should have done our research. But welcome back, Team Binge. I know we took some time off, but here we are. You're welcome. The mother, so Josh Brolin's the dad. He's Royal Abbott. All these guys have like R names, which is just great. There's Rebecca, there's Royal, there's Rhett. Thank you, show, for making this confusing. Lily Taylor plays his wife, who is Cecilia. We catch a glimpse of him. He's not real prevalent in this first episode, but Will Patton. Did you recognize him? He's the sick, I guess, patriarch of the Tillerson family.
Yeah, the other old guy. I know him probably best from Remember the Titans. Kind of played the assistant coach.
The non-racist coach.
Classic. And then Armageddon.
Yes, Armageddon. That's
Armageddon.
right. He's like the right-hand man in Armageddon, right? Mm-hmm. This was directed by Alonso Ruiz Palacio. Did I do it? Did I get it?
Palacios?
Oh,
I think
whatever.
It's Ruiz Palacios. But very good.
Nothing the guy had done before I looked up his IMDb was anything that I recognized. And then it was written by a guy who is a Juilliard playwriting fellow. I went on his page. He's a very serious picture, and he's a playwright in this day and age, which lets you know He's a very serious fella. I didn't write his name
now, again,
down,
I
though,
didn't.
so I don't know who it is.
That's all you need. Just Juilliard playwriting fellow. Well, maybe that's his name. His name is Fellow. Brian Fellows.
Nice.
Did you look this up? Is this an original? Is this based off of a book?
No, I think this is an original. This playwright wrote this. I can't believe I don't have his name written down. That's so embarrassing. Hey, you riff a little bit while I come up with his name.
But yeah, I do. One of the things I do like about this show, as we kind of start
Brian
getting
Watkins
into it, is Ryan Watkins.
Brian Watkins.
Brian. See, I had it right. Brian Fellows Watkins.
There you go. We got there.
But yeah, I what I like about the show is it is so gorgeous. Like, this is filmed in Wyoming, correct? Is that where the farm is, or ranch? Just gorgeous vistas, and I love like the sci-fi elements that it kind of brings in, but it doesn't do it to a point that is distracting. I think it's very much a kind of family drama first and foremost. They spend a lot of time in this first episode developing all the characters, and they don't rush it. They do a really good job of establishing it. They use a couple little cool kind of shortcuts to help establish the characters as well, which I'm sure we'll kind of talk about a little bit. But I couldn't recommend the pilot enough. I think this was a really good hour-long show that definitely hooked both of us in, and we really wanted to watch the second episode, but for the sake of the pod, we held back, and we'll do it episodically.
Yeah, this is one of those
and
shows.
I think, let's say one other thing. I do think that by the time we're recording this, as we generally do, we record late or currently out there. So if you want to join in the mystery and everything with us, please reach out to us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com or at Team Binge on your various social medias and play along with us. But please keep the spoilers down to a minimum since we are watching episodically.
Yeah, but we're going to make some guesses. The one thing I was wanting to say is this is one of those shows where, like, they start so strong and you're just like, God, I hope they land it. Like, I hope,
please.
I hope by episode 8, I believe there's 8 episodes, like, it makes sense. It's kind of like, it has the same vibe of Dark, like the TV show Dark, with like the pulsing music and just like the way it's shot so beautifully. Like, it gives me that same vibe, and the music like constantly makes you like stress out a little bit because it's just that like pulsing. I don't know how to describe it. Sound. I don't know how they make it.
Keep doing it. Just keep pulsing.
That quick like violin. Yeah. That's not how a violin sounds. And so that's what got me. And then anytime a show starts with some sort of mythology about some god that's passed down through time in Josh Brolin's voice, I'm just in on. But the overall synopsis, from what I can understand, is it's two families that are the main core of this. The Abbott family, which is Josh Brolin's family. The Tillerson family, which is like the well-to-do ranch next door. That's, I guess the patriarch is Will Patton. I should say that the Abbott Ranch is coming from Cecilia Lily Taylor's character. It's been in her family for like 100 years, I think he says. But the synopsis I read online, which summed it up very quickly, is Wyoming rancher Royal Abbott discovers an unfathomable mystery at the edge of his property, setting into motion a catastrophic chain of events. And then my summary was, this is a show about missing cows, because the whole first episode, they're like, where are the cows? Oh, have you checked the west pasture? Yeah, I've checked there. Is it the southern yeah. So I think we found out where the cows went by the end of it, but, you know, who knows? I love the vibe of the show, like you said. Opens up with a thunderstorm. We get the cool voiceover of a god named Kronos used a sickle to cut a tear in the cosmos between heaven and earth to separate the known from the unknown, this life and the next. And then I looked up Kronos on the Wikipedia. He's got like 3 lines. I was like, oh, this was not a major character in... But when they said the sickle, did you think death? I was like, oh, this is like the Grim Reaper, sickle, death. But this has to do with time, which I think you and I both love shows that have a time element. Correct me if I'm wrong. But like, you like Dark.
They kind of play around with... Dark was a lot of fun, where they kind of literally went really forward in time, like, 30, 40 years, I think, like forward, backward, and it kind of played with that. Really difficult show to kind of follow. This, I don't think, is going to play on that as much, but I do like how they integrated the idea of Kronos, and at the very end we get a little soliloquy more about actually this episode has the header of this speech, and then kind of the footer. The end of the episode finishes with almost the exact same speech given from each of the characters.
But done by who?
But done by the hippie chick.
Her name is Autumn, played by Imogen
Autumn.
Poots. Autumn. What did I say?
Autumn, you're good. That's
okay,
right.
Wonderful.
Yeah. But yeah, I like the idea of it saying like Kronos, and the fact that when he kind of messes with the hole, I do think it's going to be timey-wimey when he just kind of puts his arm in, and we'll kind of get to it a little bit, but
Did you just say timey-wimey after the sentence of when he puts his hand in the hole?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, everybody knows when you put a hand in the hole.
We're a family podcast, Tom. Please be careful.
Yeah, he was shirtless when he did it. Oh no, that was later.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
But yeah, I like that element of bringing in like the mythos of Kronos and Kronos chronology actually dealing with time. I think is kind of unique.
Okay, well, let's talk about the time element when we get to that moment. But we'll run through. I
don't have time for it right now.
Right, sure. For those of you that have not sat through a show with us, what we're going to do is just run through a summary, talk about different parts, and we're going to unravel this mystery. Tom, what was the show we watched that was based on the Stephen King novel with the evil spirit that like essentially possessed people? Do you remember that one? El Cuco. Do you remember what that was called? Like The Other, or do you get the same vibe out of that? Was it The Outsider? That might be right. Yeah. Maybe. Do you get some of the same vibe in terms of like, I don't know, like if Stephen King had written this one, I wouldn't have been surprised. Does that make sense? Do you get the same vibe or no?
Yeah, maybe. I feel like Stephen King.
You got to yes and me, dude. Please, yes.
No. Well, it is to a point. Like I think Stephen King is not necessarily as sci-fi-ish as the show seems to be, the way it kind of plays around with time. I don't think Stephen King does that. I think it's more kind of like ghouls and ghosts and that kind of deal. But I think the way it's shot and some of the elements are definitely aligned.
Got it. Okay. Well, let's open it up.
But I don't think, if we're going to talk about that show, that's a show that I don't necessarily think landed quite as well as the show was. I thought it was a fun journey, but it did not stick to landing.
Thank you. You and I are in agreement there. That's actually what I thought of when we started this show. That show started so strong and like so interesting. I mean, they killed Jason Bateman. Spoiler. But like the way that show didn't land is the way I'm worried this show won't. But I have faith. I'm gonna be Lasso. I'm gonna be Ted Lasso. And
only time will tell.
Only time will tell.
And listen. If the show stinks, we'll just jump into a hole, and then maybe we'll go back in time.
No theories yet. We haven't got there. We'll have our whole theories later. All right. So very quickly, story's established. You know, we've got this family. They apparently, so it's Royal Cecilia. They have a daughter that's missing, and it took me a second to figure all this out. But their daughter-in-law is Rebecca. She was married or is married. We don't know where she's at or where she fell into. She's married to Perry, and they have a daughter whose name Amy. And we find out that Rebecca has been missing for about 9 months based on what we find out from the sheriff that shows up later. We have Royal riding the ranch. Looks great, like you said. Everything looks beautiful. This show might have inspired me to move out of the city. I don't know. We get this weird, like, rumbling noise, which, once again, this was very, like, dark to me. The show dark, not... Oh, although I will say this. I looked up a review of the show, and this person gave it 1 star, and they were like, this show is so dark. I tried to watch it. I couldn't see anything. If this is what these writers think is suspense, they should go back to film school. And I was like, that's a dumb review, dude. This show's good. And then I went to rewatch this during the day to take notes. And I could not see anything on the TV because it was so light in the room. And I was like, oh, dude, that guy's got a point. The show is shot really dark. And so you can only watch the show at night because otherwise you can't see anything. Well, at least I have a crappy TV, so... anyways, I thought that was a great moment for me discovering how dark the show was. He then comes back to the house, and they're like, oh, it's church time, and his watch has been affected. So, like, he, like, what? We're already into the time element of this. Like, did his watch stop working? Did he lose time? Is this like surfing where you get lost and he's just riding that ranch and time means nothing because he's having so much joy, just like riding a barrel on the big ocean?
You mentioned his watch. Does he like look at his watch? Does it stop? Is it on the wrong time? I know he looks at the watch in the house, but...
Well, they make a comment to him, Dad, time to get a cell phone, because he looks at his watch. His watch was wrong because he thought he still had several hours before church, but the clock on the wall was right. So it's either like he's either he got a bad watch and maybe that's going to come down to something, I don't know, or that weird rumbling noise that causes buffaloes to appear stopped his watch. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting because on a rewatch, because I watched this episode twice, this made me just start getting time elements. Like, is this the current version of Royal? Is this like a 2-hour time delay version of Royal? I don't really know how that timey-wimey kind of stuff works. He seems like he's still a single presence, a single person. But yeah, I don't know what to make of this. But again, I love the mystery right out the bat.
Tom, if you're trying to make the term timey-wimey a thing, I'm not.
Did I say it again?
You did. I'm not going with it. I'm just going to let you know right now. It's not Streets Ahead. I'm not going with it.
Okay.
I love the church. I love the church scene. There's something about this that, like, I just love. Like, people are singing, they're in the pews, and then the camera pans back, and he's reading the paper. Like, he's like, listen, I'm going to show up, but I'm not going to participate. Like, he's like, I will support my wife, but I'm going to actively support or actively protest what's going on in this building. I thought that was great. We then get the granddaughter with her Sunday school picture. And this is a great writing device. Like, hey, this explains who everyone is and, like, that they're all going to make it to heaven at some point. But, like, hey, there's mommy. She's not around. Like, I don't know. I just like this. And the kid was cute.
Did you get a sense, like, I always find this funny when you look at the picture and it's clearly not a picture drawn by a kid. Like, it's an adult trying to draw a picture like a kid.
Oh, no, I didn't look that hard.
It's still really well drawn, but it's just drawn poorly to a point. It's just kind of goofy. But did you get any sort of mystery with all the random people in the background? She kind of mentions it, like, hey, here's all the 5 or 6 people in the family, and then just a bunch of people. Like, why would there be just a bunch of random people at the ranch?
Well, I thought she was drawing... I thought the homework in Sunday school was draw what heaven is like, and she drew everyone. And so I'm assuming she thinks other people are going to make it. She's probably wrong, but I think she's assuming other people are going to make it into heaven other than her family. Now, we meet earlier before church, we meet the 2 sons. We meet Perry and we meet Rhett. Did you know either of those actors, or did you like have any connection to them at all?
I didn't know Rhett. I recognized Perry. I think his name was Tom Pelfrey. He was most recently in Ozarks. So in season 2 or 3 of Ozarks, he had a character arc. And it's funny because he has a very similar character arc, even in a single episode of this, a similar kind of vibe in Ozark. So I think he's kind of typecasted. But he was very, very good in that, and I don't doubt he'll be fantastic in this as well.
So in Ozarks, he kills his wife and is raising his daughter on his own?
I cannot speak to what happens in Ozarks. I will not spoil that for anybody, but he is definitely a troubled man in Ozarks.
El Cuco is a weird demon that possesses people. Go watch The Outsider. Also, Dark has to do with time travel, and it's in German language, so you have to watch it with subtitle. Spoilers!
Or you learn German.
Or you learn German, that's fair.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Upgrade your business with Shopify, home of the #1 checkout on the planet. Shop Pay boosts conversions up to 50%, meaning fewer carts going abandoned and more sales going cha-ching. So if you're into growing your business, get a commerce platform that's ready to sell wherever your customers are. Visit Shopify.com to upgrade your selling today.
Then we find ourselves, my favorite line, at the rodeo. Rhett is a cowboy. Rhett's a cowboy because several times he's shirtless in this episode, and he has a tattoo of a guy riding I think a bull or a horse.
It's a bull.
I'm like, dude, that's really on the nose. Like, you couldn't have... like, people are going to know you're a cowboy just by the way you dress, but whatever. It hurt my back watching him ride that. I was like, oh, my spine would be compressed in 12 different places. But I did like that, like, they're a supportive family. Like, he apparently... I don't know how you rate riding bulls. I thought it was just a time thing, and he seemed to get off the bull at the right time, but I don't know. But they're like, hey... That's the bull's fault, man. That bull didn't let you ride him right. And I was like, I think the whole point of the bull is to try and, like, buck them off, right? Anyways.
I think there's just some bulls that are more aggressive than others based on, I don't know, bull stuff, Bull Durham. I don't know. Maybe that's what that movie was about.
Yep, Bull Durham was about that. That's correct. The bull riding movie,
I think
Bull Durham.
The general idea is bull riding does have judges. So I think you're supposed to stay on the bull for 8 seconds, which he does not do. He gets bucked off before that. But I think judges also say like how stable you were on the bull, and there's more to it than I think just the 8 seconds.
All right. For those of you that know how to ride bulls and how it's rated, you can write us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
But I agree with you. So, like, this was a really good scene in terms of establishing that family dynamic, how everybody was there to support. Like, even the daughter was there, you know, kind of regurgitating the line that Royal says, which is pretty funny.
She's like, that bull was really, BS. Really good writing. And they, like, look at her. And you got to wonder whether or not she's going to make it to heaven with language like that.
That potty mouth.
That potty mouth. Rhett makes eyes at a lovely lady. I think we find out later that her name is Maria. And this takes us to Cecilia and Royal talking about Amy. I think this is where she brings up that she had a dream, or maybe that was in the beginning of the show where we're establishing that she's gone. Oh, she's talking to Amy, the daughter, before she goes to bed. And she's like, hey, tell me how you met Grandpa. She's like, we learned that Royal, like, was an orphan, wandered onto the ranch. And she's like, I feel like I was waiting for him my whole life. And there's a lot to unpack there. Like, I feel like they're giving us stuff in that scene where it's like, all right, so Royal killed his parents when he was younger, or Royal appeared through the hole in the world and, like, just became, like, I don't know, but there's something there that, like, if you're paying attention to the details, which I didn't do during the after party, and I will during this movie, and I will out sleuth you, my friend. But I did feel like they were trying to lay some stuff during that scene. Anytime an adult explains something to a child in a TV show, they're typically trying to dump some Easter eggs into your basket.
It's just classic fun mystery show stuff to do. Like, give this guy's backstory just complete, like, autonomy to do whatever you could potentially want to do with it, and just make you theorize like crazy. So I really enjoyed that.
So I'm losing sleep over this. It doesn't feel like you're losing sleep over it. You accept it. You're like, hey, they might be giving us something here, but I'm not gonna dive into it.
I'm making the mental note. I'm gonna keep that in my back pocket, and we'll look at it later.
All right, Sherlock Tom. There's some late night rumbling, which anytime there's late night rumbling on a Wyoming ranch, you got to be scared. We cut to the Tillerson fancy house. So this is the actor Will Patterson, who plays Wayne Tillerson. He seems to be dying. He seems to be dying a slow, painful death in a wheelchair and with some machines set up, right?
He's just on an oxygen tank, right?
Is that all it is? Okay.
I think it was just an oxygen tank, and I don't think he was sitting in a wheelchair. I think he was just sitting in a chair looking out the pasture and everything. And
his
he
mistake,
stood up
man.
And walked over to his buffalo.
If he's using his legs like a sucker, as Homer Simpson says, he should have a wheelchair. That's the only way to live. He talks to that buffalo mount. What's he doing with the buffalo mount, Tom? And does this buffalo appear later? That's what I want to know.
Oh, I was going to bring it up later, but something tells me this is the same buffalo. Like, he's talking to the buffalo. The buffalo he was shot earlier because he had the 2 arrows in him, and he runs across the different folks of the Abbott family. But afterwards, sitting on this guy's wall is my take.
Yeah. I don't know what's happening
but
there.
There's also a weird rock on the table. Did you notice that? Like, I feel like he touched it a couple times. The camera kind of panned in on it. Like, it kind of also gave me some, like, I don't know, spacey, weird vibes. Like, is this like a meteorite, a comet, something else that maybe created the hole? I don't know. There was some other weird element to that.
I didn't notice a
Could be nothing.
rock anywhere. Okay, so you think there's like there was like a meteor on a coffee table.
Yeah, like it seemed like a geode almost. Like maybe it was like kind of cut and you could see into it a little bit, but they just kind of focused on it, and I feel like he touched it multiple times, that there might be something to it.
He touched it multiple times in the scene?
He did. Mm-hmm.
Okay. But he didn't make it like the head of a cane that he walked around with, because that is you got to pay attention to those. Certainly, if it's amber with a mosquito in it, you got to pay attention to that kind of stuff. He calls Cecilia, Abbott's wife, which I didn't know why, and he's like, something is happening, something is coming, and her assumption is, oh, the neighbor's drunk. Which,
yes,
not necessarily a bad conclusion to jump to, but I would have maybe asked him a couple more questions, like, hey, what's coming? What's happening? Instead of just being like, oh, silly Wayne, he's dying and drunk over there. I don't know.
Well, he's the one that hangs up on her. He just kind of says those very ominous lines and hangs up.
Oh,
but the assumption is
forgive
he
me.
knows
Call
something.
him back. That would be my advice. Call him back, because that's what a normal person would do. Like, hey, if I called you and I was like, something's happening, something is coming, click, you know what you'd do? You'd be like, you'd text me or you'd call me and you'd be like, hey man, everything okay? Like, but maybe they're not close. I guess we established later that they're not necessarily close families. But then we're back on the ranch, and this is where the mystery begins, Tom. What are we missing?
The real mystery. 2 cows, 2 cattle.
We're missing 2 cows. What do you think happened to these 2 cows, Tom? First impression, coming in cold. What happens to the 2 cows?
I mean, you got to assume the cows fell through the hole, but I don't know. I want to look at that south fence a little bit more for myself.
Is it my favorite part is where he yells at his son. He's like, did you check and the son just like looks at him. He's like, God, yeah, why do you think I'm an idiot? I already checked it.
And then he walks into the house, and then Cecilia says the same thing. Is it the south fence? No, it's not the south fence.
Yeah,
great.
That's so good. So they're out in the yard. I think this is where they wake up Rhett. We find out Rhett likes to sleep in his truck. He loves his truck.
Well, he seems to be. He's like a playboy, I guess. They kind of keep mentioning like who's he gonna wake up with, who's he gonna be with. When Autumn starts walking up towards the ranch.
Yeah, I think this is where we're establishing Rhett as the hero of the story. You know, he drinks a lot. He's a womanizer. He rides bulls. He's got that sweet tattoo. I mean, this is clearly...
He's got no kids.
He's got no kids, no responsibility. He's living the life that everyone wants to live. Just fulfilled. Probably feels real good about himself. Anyways, this is when Miss Poots arrives. And I don't know if I wrote it down that she's a hippie or they referred to as a hippie, but the vibe is that she's a bit hippie-ish. Her character name is Autumn.
They say she's from Boulder. So I guess you're a poet from Boulder. You got to be a little bit of hippie, right?
Sure. My favorite line from Royal is, we're not in the market for poems, which was just a great line delivered by Josh Brolin. And I thought, has anyone ever been in the market for poems? Tom, have you ever been like, hey, we got to go Home Depot. Oh, let's hit the market for some poems? No one's ever been in the market for poems, other than lovers.
I mean, I could say back when I was like a young youth, back in maybe the middle school time frame, I would plagiarize poets to write love letters to girls I liked in school.
Okay, well, hey folks, this was only supposed to be a 45-minute podcast. It's about to become about 3 hours. Tom, let's unpack this. What?
You didn't go through.
No.
You didn't go through a poetry phase.
No, the only poetry I had was like from Lord of the Rings or like C.S. Lewis books. None of that stuff was about love. So go on, Tom. What poets were you quoting? You were an Oscar Wilde man?
No idea. Just Googled like poetry or Googled, generic lines, and I would take different lines from different poems and try to put them together and pawn them off as my own.
You took like the Road Less Traveled poem and you were like, hey, I'm the Road Less Traveled. Your nickname, Road Less Traveled.
Maybe steal some like lyrics from like boy band love songs, put those in there too.
Oh, that's not surprising considering your love of boy bands, but that's wonderful. I'm going to make a mental note of this, and we're going to dive into it a little bit harder at later dates because I'm fascinated by your love poetry phase in middle school. Oh, Tom, I love it. I love it.
I'm
so
not
much.
alone. I know Barrett's with me.
Oh, Barrett, we've missed you. All right, so we find out she's a poet from Boulder. I thought this was a little weird. She's like, hey, I just want to camp here, and he gives in. Like, I feel like this was a plot device that feels a little bit forced because Royal doesn't seem like the type of guy that's going to be like, hey, yeah, stranger, go live on our land. I don't know. Maybe...
Well, she makes the point of saying, like, you can need the money. She brings out a good stack, and clearly, like, we've established that
Does
they
he
kind of
take the
do.
money, though?
And I think he does, yeah. Pretty sure he does.
Okay. And she
I
only
could be
pulled
wrong.
out, like, one bill. I just want to point out.
No, that was a
Okay.
stack.
All right. So she's a drug dealer.
Had to be at least, like, 6 million. I don't know how money works.
There's did you feel like this scene was like pertinent? Like, did you feel like, because there were a couple of details in here that I caught. Like, she says, hey, there's a guy in town that says you're a conservationist. Because he asked, like, how'd you know about us? And she mentions a guy. And then when she, like, shakes his hand, she goes, glad to finally meet you. And I was like, okay, that's a little bit weird. So this is the deal with, like, time travel or time shows. Like, you don't know what you're being set up for. And so you're like, okay, have these people, like, how has she heard of him? Because it was more than like, oh, this guy in town told me about you. It was like a very deliberate, glad to finally meet you type of thing. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah,
did you get the same bit?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, this is definitely establishing just a lot of mystery, and she is definitely one of the biggest enigmas of this first episode because she seems to know a lot more than she's letting on. Like, she asks him later about, like, do you want to share a secret? And that's after he found the hole. Glad to finally meet you is goofy. We haven't really established who Royal is to this town or, you know, this area that he lives. We've only really met his family. And he might just be a known rancher, but he doesn't seem like any sort of like local celebrity. Just because you're a conservationist, I don't think is going to make you incredibly popular. So there's a lot to unpack with her that I don't think we've got the answers to yet.
Yeah, I wonder if the conservationist thing comes out of the fact that, and the Sons talk about it later, about how the dad or Royal is like old school, and so like rather than like drilling on the land or like mineral rights stuff or doing any of that, he seems to be like, they're using horses, they're running cattle, they're like keeping it in a natural way, and they're not willing to sell the ranch. I wonder if that's where she's getting the conservationist thing. But I thought the glad to finally meet you thing was super important. The most important part of this is, I think this is then where Royal, Perry, and Rhett ride out to try and find these two cows. And a Coulter Waller song kicks on, and the song is called The Devil Wears a Suit and Tie. And this guy's got such a great voice. Did you recognize this song, or did the song hit you at all?
There was a couple songs in this episode that rang true to me, and I remember hearing them from somewhere else. This one did not. I love the song, but it didn't necessarily come to mind.
So this guy, you will recognize his voice because he sings another song called Sleeping on the Blacktop that they play in the movie Hell or High Water, which is a movie that I really love. Same people that did Sicario. But like, the guy has got such a distinct voice. It's a country, I mean, he's a country artist. But Coulter Waller, I recommend, go listen to that guy. Great stuff. Sleeping on the Blacktop. When it hits in Hell or High Water, they're like driving through dirt roads, like either having just robbed a bank or on their way to robbing a bank. That movie's so good.
Spoiler alert, they rob banks.
They do rob banks, but it's for a good cause, much like most bank robbers. Then we find ourselves riding the ranch fence line, and the Tillersons, the rich family, roll up on some sweet quads. And I like Billy, the younger brother, is just like singing. I don't know what he's singing. It's like, I thought it was like a police song or something. It was like Watching You. I don't know. Anyways, they deliver them some paperwork that says that their property line is a mile over into the Tillerson line. And as someone recently having to deal with plots and properties, I was like, a mile's a really big, like, area to be wrong on. Also, I'm pretty sure these ranches talk in acres, not miles. So I don't know. I'm nitpicking right now, but like to be wrong by a mile with a property line, like that's a lot. Like I don't know.
It does seem rather extensive.
Did you recognize any of these brothers? Do any of these guys like? Are they from other stuff?
None of these guys jumped out. I didn't do any research on these guys, but I'm sure they probably had smaller-ish roles. Nothing I've seen them from.
So the Tillersons, since I felt like they were the heroes of the show, much like Rhett. The one, his name is, what got confusing for me is one of the guys' names is Trevor, and his brother's name is Luke. Well, in Friday Night Lights, the actor that plays Trevor, his name is Luke in Friday Night Lights. So the brother that doesn't make it, spoiler alert, or the brother that gets thrown in the hole at the end of the episode, he plays Luke in Friday Night Lights. And so that actor looked familiar to me. Plays a very different character in this show. But what I liked what the show was doing here is the show is like, oh, these are like the rich cats with the quads, and these are like the like traditionalists on their horses, and like the horse guys are like noble and better, and the quad guys are like rich and privileged. What I would like to point out... Go ahead.
I was just going to say that the guy in the quad, or one of the guys, I think the one that was trying to be more reasonable, he's got like his Under Armour shirt on too. Like just the outfits and everything they kind of have a bit is a lot more like posh than what you would think a cowboy would be wearing.
So like one of them is in like a like form-fitting Nike like sweat, I don't know, and then later on it's Under Armour, and I was like, who's the sponsor of this show? Is it Under Armour or is it Nike? Because we need to establish who's paying the money for this product placement. But apparently this show went both ways. Here's what I like to point out: horses, I think, are a lot more expensive than quads. You can at me at Team Binge podcast@gmail.com. But so a horse is you're gonna pay a couple $1,000 up front to probably buy a horse, and then every like 2 months you have to have a farrier come out and like fix the hooves. And I only know this because I was like, maybe I'll get a horse now that I have some property. So expensive. A quad, it's like, hey, pay for it and then pay for gas and maybe some maintenance. So I did appreciate like how they were like, oh, these guys are on quads and they're like rich and privileged. But when it comes out, I think dollar signs, I think horses, because horses last for like 25 years. I mean, they don't have to.
I feel like it could be the conservative or the conservationist ideology too. Like he's not putting tires and, gas guzzling quads on his land. He wants it to be living animals and horses.
Oh, I'm pretty sure those were hybrid quads. And
okay.
Listen, if you burn tires after you're done with them, then they just go into the atmosphere and become clouds that provide rain. I'm assuming. I'm not a scientist. I don't know. I don't know how many times I've said I'm not a scientist on this podcast, but if you're playing bingo, there you go. This is where the hole is found. And this hole is, I'm going to say this hole is about 20 yards wide. Is that 20 yards in, would that say, would that be correct?
I'd say maybe 20 feet. I don't know if it's quite 20 yards, but yeah, okay. we'll say 20 feet by 20 feet. Okay. Good symmetrical hole. And
it's not just a hole. There's some stuff going on with it. How would you describe this hole, Tom? I don't know how many times in my life I've asked you to describe a hole, Tom, but this is one of them.
It's very dark and mysterious. It's got like this, I don't know, like kind of on the surface, there's this kind of weird like sandy, I don't know, like kind of cosmic glow that kind of goes across the top. And it seemed to be almost organic because it kind of moves with the wind a little bit. And then underneath, it just seems to be just darkness. So it's super, super weird and ominous.
It felt like what Sirius Black falls through in the Harry Potter movie. Oh. That's
through
what I would say.
Something gate that the internet nerds are probably going to yell at us for.
Come
at us, internet nerds.
I don't think we're across. I don't think we cross with Harry Potter people. Great movies, great books, but okay, yeah, it does have like a weird. It does have a weird surface to it, I guess. It's not just a hole, so clearly something's going on. But I think we solved the missing cow issue, right?
It's gotta be, yeah. I don't think there's any logical reason for it, at least that's been defined yet. So if the cows we're standing right there in that patch, and then went away, or if they were stupid cows and just walked into the hole.
Here's what I would like to talk about, Tom, is the SOP for discovering a mysterious hole. We see what royals...
And for those that don't know what SOP means?
Standard operating procedure. So standard operating...
For other people, not for me,
sure.
for other people.
I know you know. Standard operating procedure for discovering a mysterious hole on your property. We see what Royal does, and we'll dissect what Royal does. Royal, here's his steps. Throws one rock through this weird foggy hole. Next thing he does, sticks his hand in it. He sticks his hand in it, which causes him to like flash forward to his house. We see some flashes of like some kids, and then he pulls out and his hand's all black, and he seems to be like going through some sort of like turmoil or whatever. Tom, you discover a weird foggy hole on your land. Talk me through what's your plan? Like, where are we? And if you need some time, let me know, because I've thought this through. Go ahead. Let's hear it.
So I feel like the very first thing he did, very first thing I would do.
Throw a rock.
Take a rock,
yep,
throw it in.
100%. See if it comes back, you know?
Well, I don't know about that. I would just listen to see if I can figure out how far down this hole goes. Then I would probably... I wouldn't stick my hand in it. I would likely tie...
What would you stick in it, Tom? What appendage would you stick in it?
Well, it depends on how far forward in time you want to go. Depending upon the appendage you put in, that's how far you go. Or maybe backwards. I don't know. We'll see if we get there. But I feel like I'd go back to my ranch. I'm assuming they've got chickens. I would tie like a string around a chicken's leg and toss the chicken in there.
Okay.
See what happens, and then pull this chicken out. Because when he puts his hand in, like that organic material starts to kind of like engulf his arm and kind of start to almost go up of it a little bit. And then once he yanks his hand out, he's got like, it's almost like black or decaying,
residual,
but it goes away almost instantly. Yeah. So it's like, is it like trying to latch itself onto him or something? And now that we know by the end of this episode that he's entirely engulfed in it, like what that's going to do, it's super cool.
It is super cool,
but
I think
you do with this whole...
your scientific mind is much better than whatever it is that Royal decides to do, which is throw a rock, stick his arm, go through some weird like forward back flashback things, and then come to. 100%. I'm going to throw a rock, and then I'm probably going to go find a rope because I'm a cattle guy, a ranch guy. I'm going to probably drop that rope in there, like pull the rope out, see what happens to the rope. Then I'm probably going to tie something in a rope, throw it in there. And then I'm probably going to go back and like, I'm going to be like, hey, Rhett, let's get to drinking, my man. You're my favorite son. And then I get drunk. I get Rhett a little bit tipsy, and then I'd be like, "Hey, Rhett, guess what? Found something real cool in the west pasture. Come on, buddy, come on." And then we go out there, and Rhett would be like, "Hey, that's a cool." And I'd be like, "Hey, Rhett, put this rope around your waist, and then I'm gonna lower you in. You tell me what you see." And then maybe that's the end of Rhett, or maybe we pull Rhett out and we discover some things. I don't know. I'm not sticking my hand in there. That's all. I'm not sticking my hand after losing a rock. My favorite moment is when he throws the shovel in later in the episode, and it's just like, why'd you get rid of that shovel, man? That shovel, I don't know, it's like $15.
Perfectly good shovel.
Yeah, perfectly good shovel. Why would you throw that in there? Oh, man. I had so many thoughts about how quickly we proceeded to shove our hand in that hole that I don't know. Maybe he was noodling.
But this is our first glimpse. Yeah, this is our first glimpse of the time stuff, not anything that rhymes with time, but just time stuff.
Timey-wimey,
yeah. But yeah, it cuts to
I hate you so
seemingly the very near future, because it cuts to him walking or seeing his wife looking into the kitchen, and then the very next scene we see that. But right after it cuts out and he pulls his hand, he does see like two kids, right? We don't know if it's a younger version of him. One of the kids, I think, has kind of red hair, so seemingly is going to be a little bit more easy to spot as we maybe get introduced to more characters. But yeah, super interesting. And again, the next scene we get is them right at the ranch, and then there you see Joy, who is the sheriff, kind of talking about the Rebecca case.
Right. So he pulls his hand out. He rides back home. He goes into the ranch house, and we see the exact same thing. He walks in, Joy the sheriff's at the table. Cecilia says something like, Joy's here, say hi to Joy. And he's like, oh, hi. And then we find out, and I like this, like, we've got the supernatural kind of elements of this, the sci-fi elements of this, but we also have, like, the human element of, like, missing wife, like, what's happening. I'm assuming she was riding one of the 2 cows and fell into the hole. Who knows? So we find out 9 months marks the day since she's been missing, and the FBI, thanks federal government, has stopped searching for Rebecca. Then we cut to a scene of Amy, the daughter, saying her, like, bedtime prayer, and then the violin music, the, like, kind of, like, I don't know how to describe it other than to say, like, stressful violin, not peaceful violin, but stressful violin, and then cut with the campfire of Miss Poots. And that'll creep me out every time. Anytime you got a kid praying, like, violin music, like, you've just got me on edge. I really liked how they did that. But so I guess my question is, the hole has got to be some sort of time portal, right? And we won't. I mean, this is why I wanted to watch episode 2, because he gets kicked in, and so it's like episode 2 may solve this for us. But like the whole, obviously, with the Kronos thing, with when he sticks his hand in, it's got to deal with time, right?
Yeah, I think 100%. And to your point, I do think we're going to find out sooner than later, because my assumption is Josh Brolin is heavily involved in this series. If he's just in the first episode and then gets thrown down a hole and we don't see him anymore, I don't know.
Spoiler, Jason Bateman was only in like 1 or 2 episodes of El Cuco before he got removed.
It's possible.
Oh, Jason Bateman. I wish he'd do something. I wish he'd do something dark having to do with like a wilderness area and like get involved in illegal stuff. But ever since Arrested Development, we haven't seen much of Jason Bateman. We're back at the hole. This is where Royal, once again, ever the Scientist Royal, we call him, throws 4 shovels of dirt into the hole, is surprised that the hole doesn't disappear, and then throws his shovel in the hole. It's like, Royal, what are we doing here, man? I was blown away by his methodology. I'm like, did you think the hole was going to disappear? This is not a Zelda video game where you like, it's like 3 shovelfuls and like, oh, the sequence is done. I don't know.
So when you throw a rock down the hole and you don't hear any noises, like to think that 4 shovelfuls of dirt are going to fill that up, it's a bold play.
Right.
But then he keeps struggling. He tries to put the tarp on. The tarp starts blowing in the wind, and then that just falls down the hole. And he just screams like, "What the F?" And then just screams at the hole while he's kind of the camera's panning out. I loved it.
I want to know what his tarp plan was. Like, it's not like he had big rocks to weigh down the edges of the tarp. Like, it's a windy pasture, Royal. Like, the wind is going to whip that tarp away. I don't know. Have you ever tried to put a tarp on, I don't know, a pool or a grill or a bed sheet on a bed when it's windy outside? I don't know. But when he screamed
I feel like he was just trying to... He's just trying to cover the mystery. Maybe a helicopter, a plane, something goes by was my thought. That's probably what I would do, is try to cover the hole. But then a tarp in the middle of a pasture also looks kind of ominous. So
I'm going to go stand on that tarp. What appears, Tom? What appears at this moment?
I think this is technically the second time we see the Schrodinger's buffalo, apparently.
We don't know if it's the same buffalo on the wall. This is the first time we see it, right? This is the first time we see it live.
The episode starts. The very first thing we see in this show is the buffalo with the 2 things on the side of him. Because he's doing the story. He's saying the Kronos thing, and it's kind of giving us little bits about his ultimate, like running to the hole and throwing the body where he loses his shirt and all that stuff. So we see little bits of it. So that buffalo is there at the beginning. So it kind of establishes that mystery. But yeah, 2 arrows on the side, assuming it was hunted. Don't know if it survived those 2 arrows. I'm assuming a big animal like that could, but my assumption is it later passed, and it is the same buffalo that's in Wayne's house. Yeah,
what I thought what was interesting about the arrows is they're not modern arrows. They're like bird feather, like historic native people arrows. So I
Do you
thought that
think
was
that?
interesting.
Do you think that like the buffalo shows up at certain times based on like what's kind of going on? Because he's freaking out about the hole. He can't figure out what's going on. I don't know if there's anything like existential that just happened in this moment for the buffalo to appear to him. Because the buffalo later appears in front of the two sons
Right, when they're
driving back with the body in the back. So I thought maybe there might be something interesting with the timing of when they see this buffalo appear. And the buffalo just kind of walks away at the end too. It doesn't just like, manifest and then go away. Like it seemingly just lets it walk away.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was a correlation between what was happening with the characters and the buffalo appearing, but my assumption is the buffalo has been transferred from a different time to the moment. But I do think it shows up at the hole with Royal, and then it just wanders away, and it coincidentally it's on the road when the brothers almost hit it. I didn't think it transported to where the brothers were because they were in a moment of stress.
Okay.
Although I'm assuming they were screaming the F word in that truck probably too.
That's what it calls the buffalo. That's actually the buffalo's name.
That's great. This is then where Royal rides over to Autumn, tells her about the pasture. She is field dressing a grouse, which good for her. They talk, and he's like, "Hey, what happens if something, what if something bad happens to you?" She's like, "Oh, nothing bad's gonna happen to me." And he's like, "Well, that grouse probably did." I wanted to know how she got that grouse. She didn't catch it with her bare hands, but maybe she has a gun. I don't know. Maybe she shot it with a bow and arrow, and then she went and shot a buffalo twice with a bow and arrow. I don't know. A lot of theories about the buffalo and arrow in this show. She asked Royal, I thought this was strange, how much would he sell the ranch for? And she names like a couple million, and he's like, "Oh, it sounds like you have it on you." And then she's like, "Oh, well, a girl's got to keep her secrets." And then she's offering to swap secrets. This felt more like a test. Like, "Hey, Royal, how much do you love this place?" Mm-hmm. Or, what would you give up to leave this place? And then, I don't know, the secrets thing I thought was an interesting play. God, I hope this show lands it, because if all this stuff is just, random BS, then I'm going to be so upset.
Well, again, it's fun because it's just laying the groundwork for a lot of things. And I think there's enough time in 8 episodes, an hour long, that you can tug at all these strings, but we'll see. But it is interesting that this is the second character that seemingly wants Royal's land. Wayne's trying to take it by force, and she's trying to potentially buy it off of him. But she's
by
still,
force,
again,
you mean
just
by using the county assessors, which is all perfectly legal.
Yeah, but we don't know. I mean, he seems kind of, I don't know, manipulative. So maybe he's manipulating the courts to get that. I don't know. Because, like to your point, miles of land seems like a big swath to just rewrite.
Right. I'm with you. I don't know what the deal with Autumn is. My assumption is Autumn is, I don't know. Autumn is not normal. Autumn is either a supernatural or is someone from the past, the future. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Something's happening with Autumn that I can't quite explain. Anyone that draws weird circles and triangles inside of in their journal, something's happening with them that's not normal.
They were kind of they kind of look like peace symbols, man. We have kind of established she's a hippie, so maybe she was just, summer love.
Nah, I don't think that's it. I don't think that's it at all. All right, let's roll with the honky-tonk stuff because this goes by quick. The two brothers are talking in the honky-tonk. Older brother, I feel like Perry's job at this point is to be like, "Hey, Rhett, chasing the rodeo for the last 10 years has been a waste of your life. Maybe get a real job and stop getting drunk every night." I do feel like an older brother's job, in this day and age, we all don't want to offend anyone. We don't want to but every once in a while, it's okay to be like, "Hey, dude, actually being responsible and getting a job, helping out the family, that could maybe be good for you as a human." But Perry is not like that. Perry's like, "Promise me you won't stop chasing this crazy dream of being a rodeo cowboy." Tom, name 3 famous rodeo cowboys that make a good living and are famous, and I'll give you as much time as you need to name any of them.
Well, you've got John McCowboy.
Okay. Yep. John McCowboy.
Steve
McQueen.
Steve
yes.
McBoots.
Steve McQueen.
Nope.
McBoots.
Steve McBoots.
Sorry, his cousin.
It's all right. And Theodore.
I hope it starts with Mick something, because all your guys have been Scottish so far. McCowboy, McBoots, and I'll give you a third one, please. Mick.
Theodore McSpurs.
McSpurs. He hates it when you mess up the last letter of his last name. Anyways, that was great. Not a lot of famous in this day and age. Maybe, I don't know. Come at us with your famous cowboys or famous rodeo
But he
stars.
does do a little bit of Big Brother stuff, telling her like, hey, we've clearly liked this girl, because I think Maria walks in and he kind of gives her the eye and like, hey, you've been love this girl since you were 16. Like, why don't you go and finally... There's definitely some brotherly love coming through.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he's not a good big brother in some of the... And I would say Red is a bad little brother at several points during the show. But there is a point where the older brother should be like, hey, maybe try and go and take some computer classes. Like, that sort of thing. I don't know. Anyways, this is when I think Rhett goes over to talk to Maria, right? He encourages... Or have we not gotten to that point yet?
No, yes. I think so. Like, they're just kind of talking at the table. And
he calls him a bull-riding son of a bee. He's like... You bull-riding son of a bee. And I thought to myself, if I'm ever going to encourage people, how I'm going to encourage you, Tom, from now on is I'm going to call you a bull-riding son of a bee in order to get you to do things.
Did you notice the song that was playing in the background in this scene?
Unless it was from Coulter Waller, I did not. No, sir.
No. It was like very, very familiar, and I couldn't kind of put a finger to it. And once I kind of do a little bit more of the lyrics, I realized this is actually a famous song from Pulp Fiction called "You Never Can Tell." I think it was originally sung by Chuck Berry, if I have that right, but this is kind of a honky-tonk cover, if you will. But this is the famous scene in Pulp Fiction where Uma Thurman and John Travolta hop up on kind of that stage and start doing that very iconic dance.
Okay. All right.
So that was kind of unique. And there might be some stuff in the lyrics that might kind of go into the show a little bit too. I know a lot of these types of shows do a really good job of kind of integrating some of the music into the actual like kind of plot and mystery of what's going on. So, but I just thought that song was kind of cool.
Sure. No, I like music. I like Coulter Waller. Did he do that song? He did not do that song.
He did not. This is not a country jam. Although it was a pretty cool country cover.
We're back at the ranch. Royal, I guess he's in the barn and he goes to pull a drawer out, and then Cecilia like knocks on the door and he's like, "Oh, it's Michael, I'm dressing," or something like that. What we all do whenever our mothers knock on the door to our bedroom. And I did not understand what was happening here.
There was a sock on the barn door.
Oh, well, that's Cecilia's fault then. Cecilia had no place to open that barn door. I didn't know what was.
My thought is
what he's doing.
This might be something maybe from his childhood. Like maybe when he saw the past, the future, one of those kids was him, and this is something that kind of calls back to when he was a kid. I don't know, because it's a small drawer, so it can't be something too big. Maybe it's a watch. I don't know.
I assumed it was whatever he murdered Rebecca with. So I didn't know. I'm assuming it's a nightstick, like a old Scotland Yard nightstick that he clubbed her with. I didn't know. Then this is Cecilia and Royal talking, outside on the porch. Cecilia's feeling is she thinks Rebecca's gone for good. And by that, I'm assuming means she's dead. And Royal makes some comment about, do you feel that this is God's plan? And I'll let you make your joke. Go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I think this is establishing, we saw in the earlier scenes that Royal would go to church with his family, support him, but he's not going to sing. He's just going to sit in the back of the pew or whatever and do his thing, read his book. But I think here is where we figure out why, and it's because of Rebecca. I think maybe something happened, like with Rebecca being gone, it's him not being able to justify God's plan to take away Rebecca from the family, so he kind of turns his back.
Forgive me, I was looking at the outline where it says Royal asks if this is God's plan, and you've got Royal, not a God fan. And I thought plan and fan rhymed, so I thought you were trying to do a joke. My bad. Little outline.
I should have.
But yeah, Cecilia's like, hey, just because we're hurting doesn't mean God's not there. Or you can't fight it. Sometimes you just have to accept it. It's okay. And Royal makes some comment or it's not. I always appreciate any type of and this was not a very profound theological debate. But I do always think it's interesting when faced with the real world and bad stuff that happens, like faith versus, I don't know. You and I have gotten into these discussions versus God's plan and being a God fan. Like those, always fun. But
yeah,
you do see the inner conflict between the two of them, and I think it's interesting just from a perspective. Like some people choose to accept things, and others are like, hey, bad things wouldn't happen if there was. Anyways, I don't need to get into it right now, but I find that whole
that's a different pod.
I find that whole discussion fascinating. We're back at the honky tonk, where God is always at the honky tonk. Rhett tells Perry to move on from Rebecca. This was when he was not a very good little brother in my mind. I was read the room, brother. Don't tell him, hey, your wife that's missing for 9 months, you should move on from her.
Yeah, I feel like he made a slighted comment too when that sheriff was in the house, kind of saying there's something investigation. He's like, what else did you do? So they already kind of had a little bit of spat, and then they've been drinking quite a bit, I think, to this point. So he kind of blurts this out there, which is probably there's a semblance of truth in it, or else he wouldn't kind of blurted it out. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's tough if somebody's been missing for that long, and I mean, at a certain point, you always have to hold on to hope. But I mean, come on, let's move on. 3 more months, okay?
9 months.
3 more months.
This is a great top. Let's boil down. Your spouse is missing. At what point do you? This is like Castaway. At what point is it Meg Ryan? I don't remember.
Who's his wife? Year. She gets a calendar year. And then she's gone.
Who's Tom Hanks in
Helen Hunt?
Helen Hunt. Helen Hunt, I think it's 3 years, isn't it, in Castaway? It's more than a year.
Yeah, and she moved on after 12 calendar months.
This reminds me of the South Park episode where they're stowed into the auditorium, and it's listen, we've been snowed in for 3 hours. We need to figure out who we're going to eat, and they start eating the townspeople. But they're only in the auditorium for a total of maybe 6 hours. Anyways, sometimes it's a little bit too early to jump the gun. Anyways, I appreciate that you are on board with Perry for getting his wife after 9 months. Perry then goes outside and he throws up on Trevor. I kept thinking the character's name was Travis. I had to do a find and replace on the outline because I kept writing Travis, but. Perry throws up on Trevor Tillerson, his boots, while he is trying to, I think, pray with a young woman outside of the honky-tonk. And yes. Maria and Rhett are then having a moment inside. So those two are getting into it outside. Maria and Rhett are getting into it inside. This is interrupted when Rhett sees Perry through the door. And then he goes and he beats Trevor's face in. Which I thought was interesting.
As a good brother should.
Yeah, because Maria comes out and she watches him beat Trevor's face in, and then he's like, listen, I don't want to tell you your business, but that guy's one of the biggest a-holes in the world. And it's didn't you just punch that guy in the face 7 times? You seem kind of like an a-hole a little bit.
Well, he only punched him once or twice at that point. I think it's later that Perry goes a little bit crazy on him.
Okay.
But I think this is trying to give Rhett that cool guy line, just to say hey, I'm the cool one. He's a jerk, kind of a deal, and then just kind of walk past her. Doesn't even give her time to respond.
Got it. I don't know if you caught this. But Rhett's I'm going to go get the truck, which after several tequila shots, the only thing you should go do is go get the truck and then do donuts in, I don't know, in the cold beer sign yard of the honky tonk.
Yeah.
He walks by the Tillerson brothers table and he knocks on the table. Like, I don't know, is that like, hey guys, like, what up, neighbors?
Yeah.
But there is definitely some bloody knuckle prints on that. And I just thought, evidence, Tom.
Yeah. Not very smart. Some ASMR for you. But he also, I think this is the point where they were having this spat and his belt buckle pops off, which I question the integrity of this cowboy's belt buckle.
Yeah.
Your belt buckle should not be falling off.
Yeah, if you're riding steers, you know, you're out there riding steers like a cowboy should, your belt buckle's going to stay on, you know. If you're getting beat in the face repeatedly, your belt buckle should stay on.
Yeah, this is why later cowboys, like the good Garth Brooks, started wearing fanny packs instead of belt buckles.
Oh, man,
you know,
the
like
cowboy fanny pack. Ever since I moved into this new house, fanny packs for me. I'm wearing 3 fanny packs. Both sides, back, I don't know.
I thought that was a cowboy hat. That's a cowboy fanny pack hat. Okay,
yeah,
nice.
yeah, exactly. I think we then cut to, so while Rhett's getting the truck, Trevor gets up. He should have just laid in the gravel, but instead Trevor, being who he is, gets up, starts talking a load of crap to Perry, and mentions, hey, I felt bad for you, but I see why your wife left you, because you're, I don't know, terrible. And then Perry accidentally, very accidentally, understandably, beats Trevor to death with his fists repeatedly. Which, like, shows do this, where you're kind of like, wait, am I supposed to be on Perry's side? Because he really lays into that guy repeatedly. I don't know, whose side were you on? Were you on the side of the guy that was being beaten to death, or Perry, who's, like, sad about his missing wife, but can't stop punching that guy in the face, who's clearly unconscious on the ground?
Every time I see, like, a bar fight like this, it always just kind of seems so silly to me. Like, I just don't understand it. I don't get the need for, like, violence and then people to just punch each other and be like afterwards, like, oh, all right, we're cool, man. No big deal. We just punched each other in the face a bunch of times.
I don't think Trevor got up from this and was like, we're cool, man. I don't think that happened.
But I guess my thing is, like, there's kind of a trope, or I don't know, maybe it is in real life, where people just get into bar fights and, you know, you punch each other and you have a great time and people move their own directions. Like, I just don't get that necessary violence. But I thought that it would have been maybe more like an accidental kind of death. But, like, where he kind of punches him in the throat, I thought that might have, like, okay, that's it. Like, he hit him just in a certain spot where he choked, he died, but that was not his intention. But, like, the way he ultimately kills Trevor is hits him in the throat, then he still wrestles, and then that's where he does, like, a couple extra punches, and you get kind of that last punch where that audio really cuts in and just sounds just like gut-wrenching of his face just getting pummeled, which again made me think, like, is it easy to punch a guy to death with a handful of punches? I don't know how punches and bar fights work, but it seems like a necessary means to kill a guy.
I'm pretty sure Perry's hand would be very broken in a lot of places from punching Trevor's face in. But nothing's more broken than Trevor's face, that's for sure. So Trevor's dead, I believe. And we get some, I think they're cutting in and out here, because this is where, like, Rhett pulls up, right? Rhett pulls up in front of it, and it says cold beer, and then we're intercut with some stuff that's going on.
Yeah, like it does a quick cut, I think, to Autumn on her fire, and she's kind of doing that crazy poetry, which I didn't pause. I think you could kind of see her little journal or whatever, that she's kind of writing some poetry and stuff. It just seemed kind of like whimsical poetry, but she's doing those weird centric circles, kind of like doodling, which again, classic hippie stuff. At least it looks like peace symbols. But ultimately, I think the sequence kind of ends with the brothers getting in the car. They have kind of this weird, like, back and forth where, like, Rhett's like, what do you want to do? And
do you want to go to the hospital 2 hours away?
Land. Yeah. Perry doesn't kind of know what to do. And as they're kind of talking about it, that's where they screeching halt. You see the dead body actually in the back of the trunk or the bed of the truck. And this is where you see the buffalo again facing these two guys.
What do you think the age difference is between Perry and Rhett? Did you get a sense of that? Like, for me, it's, like, significant. I would imagine
they're pretty close.
Okay.
You think?
Like, in my mind, it seems significant, like, looking at the two of them. But, like, I think from a show perspective, maybe a couple of years. But in my mind, it's, I don't know, because one's married with a kid and the other one is still riding rodeo. to me, it seemed like it was a much bigger gap than maybe it is.
Yeah, my sense is they'd be relatively close. I feel like my first watch, I wasn't sure what the relationships were. Like, I knew they were brothers. I wasn't sure if it was actual, like, blood brothers.
Yeah,
or
I couldn't tell
brother-in-law.
if Perry was the brother-in-law, yeah.
Yeah, but we do establish that they are blood brothers, and Rebecca is the one that's the daughter-in-law to Royal.
Right. We find ourselves back at the ranch. Royal walks out to the barn, finds the boys with a body, as any father would. When you walk out and you find your sons in a barn, they're with a dead body. They have a family meeting. They're like, hey, Abbott family meeting, let's all meet in the kitchen.
In the kitchen, yep.
In the kitchen. He's like, listen, Mother's Day's coming up. We need to get your mother a gift. Also, let's talk about the dead body. He's got the phone, which was so great. It's a corded phone. He's holding the hang up button so that the phone isn't like ringtoning or whatever. Tom, I'm going to tell you about an experience I had today. I called someone for work. I got a voicemail. The voicemail started talking. Hey, this is so-and-so, leave a message, whatever. Started to leave my message. The person picked up the phone and was like, hey, yeah. And I was like, oh, this is a home phone with a voice message where you could hear me leaving a message, and you picked it up while I was leaving a message. I was like, no one's done that in like 10 years. I was like, what is going on at this house? And I was like, did I call a home phone number? And the person was like, oh yeah, the home phone number. I was like, oh goodness. Like,
did you just hang up on him immediately? Like, okay, you're not the person I'm looking for.
No, but unsurprisingly, the person's email address is still an AOL email address. So
it checks out.
Anyways, they have a family meeting. Royal decides not to call the police. He doesn't want Amy. And his justification, I thought, was, interesting. I don't want Amy to lose both Perry and Rebecca. I did think Rhett was interesting, where he goes, yeah, what does that mean for me? Like, Dad, I know I'm not the favorite son. Like, are you going to make me take the fall for this? And he's like, no one's going to jail. We're all going to get Kevin Bacon, who's invisible right now. They then roll the body up in a burlap sack. My favorite moment of this whole show is in the background. They're like trying to put the body on the horse, and the horse moves and the body falls on the ground. I don't think I caught it on the first watch. The second watch, I was like, I don't know if this show is playing to comedy right now because it's kind of stressful, but that's a great moment. Like, just the perfect body falling off the horse.
Well, even when he's like riding in the fields and trying to take this guy to the hole, that seems like you got to really tie a body down to keep it on a horse, I would imagine. But I don't know. I'm not a horse guy.
Take a guy to a hole is an incredible phrase.
Not a basketball term.
No. Luke finds his brother's bloody buckle in the honky-tonk. So we've got some evidence there.
Very, very poorly designed buckle.
Yeah, very poorly designed buckle. The Tillersons, I did like this. Perry goes to sleep, like he goes to lay down with his daughter. And I'm thinking, if you just murdered someone, sleep would be so difficult. Like, I felt guilt on a much lower level, and I have not been able to sleep. Like, to go, like, lay down and, like, think you're going to sleep after beating someone to death is a very bold move. I'm not putting it past Perry that he hasn't murdered multiple people before. I just want to say
okay.
that. But the Tillerson brothers show up. This is Billy and Luke. And I thought this scene was really well done. They're in the door. There's like a lot of tension. They won't let him shut the door. He won't let him come in. The kid comes down, and as kids do in the middle of the night, they need nothing but water. I need a glass of water. Thanks. I'd be like, hey, go to bed. Like, I'm trying to hide a murder here. But anyways, kids are like that. Then the brothers search the barn, and once again, this whole, like, the tension of this whole thing I thought was really well done. And the one problem I had with this whole point was when Billy picks up the horse turds. I was like, are those hot coals? They went a little bit above and beyond the like steamy CGI, and they were so perfectly formed. I was like, I've seen a horse poop before, and that, like, I was like, is he picking up charcoal, like, bricks? Like what is he holding right now? Anyways,
Dude, these are good conservationist ranch horses. They have very good solid turds.
It reminds me in Chris Farley's last movie. It's called like Almost Heroes.
Wagons East?
Almost Heroes.
Oh,
like,
almost, okay.
Almost. Yeah, you're close, but Almost Heroes. He picks up like a buffalo patty, and he's like, "Oh, that I think the herd's over there." And Matthew Perry's like, "Oh, you can tell that by like sniffing the droppings." He's like, "No, I see the herd. They're right over there." And it's just like, why?
Can I say this?
Go ahead. You can say whatever you want. It's our podcast.
We've done this podcast. We've done a couple movies. We've done 2 shows. Now doing a third. I'm quite certain you've told that exact same story on this podcast.
Listen, I will never stop telling that story. I think about that scene all the time. Anytime I see a piece of poop, I think of that scene. So you're welcome.
That's great.
Well,
I do appreciate the cut, though.
Let me ask you this: when I brought it up, did you also guess Wagons East the other time I brought up that story?
Yes, that's why I know. I'm like, this is ringing a bell. Because then we discussed that it was John Candy in Wagons East and Chris Farley.
Oh no,
in, Almost Heroes.
We've become predictable, Tom. We've told our 5 stories.
But I do love this cut where it shows him picking up the turd, and then it cuts to them like taking off on the truck, and it like pans to the bottom of the truck, and you see the appropriate like dangler right on the bottom of the truck. It's just so fitting for this character.
Yeah, I feel like they're like, hey, we're gonna make these guys seem like the worst, so they would definitely have these hanging off the back of their truck. Royal riding in the storm with the body, like the thunder, the lightning, very, very well shot. Leaving the bloody shirt in the fence, not a good like murder cover-up method. I just want to say that, unless you're going to pour bleach all over yourself. Bold play.
But I think this did fulfill his contract for a shirtless Josh Brolin, which I'm all for.
Okay, all right, interesting. Throws the body in the hole. The first time I watched this, I was like, oh, is he just going to throw the body over the fence line and be like, oh, he's on your property. You guys murdered him. But instead,
he came home like
the body
this.
in the hole. I did find it very surprising that, like, from a show perspective, I thought it was just going to be, like, him alone. But then who shows up to see his dirty deed?
That's who flashes the light right at him, Autumn.
Autumn. And then she talks about the Greek god Cronus, and she, like you mentioned before, she kind of caps this episode from his speech in the beginning. She brings up all the same stuff about this god Cronus, how he carries a sickle and he used it to separate the known from the unknown. She does ask him, hey, does anyone else know about the hole? And he says no. And her follow-up was interesting. She goes, why not? Like, why didn't you tell anyone? Which I thought was an interesting question. She then says, oh, I'm not going to tell anyone either. And then she Spartan kicks him in the chest into the hole. Oh, wait, no, she uses her hand. Never mind. She's like, this is Wyoming. And she kicks him in the chest.
She's kind of like gently, weirdly caressing or grabbing onto his shoulders, and then boom, right into the shirtless Josh Brolin, which I love the way they kind of shot it, because I feel like, to your point, it's very much 300, where like the camera pans over the hole, and it's just him just disappearing, and then boom, cuts to credits.
Right.
And man, was it hard to hit that button to not watch the next episode.
Oh, I had so much trouble. So much trouble. I hate a cliffhanger. And my issue right now is I watched this with my spouse. She's not around, so like, as soon as we're done here, I want to go watch episode 2, but I don't think I can because I'm going to get in trouble.
But we're potting, man, so you got to probably watch it at least once or twice. So watch it once and then watch it again with her. All
right. I'm not going to tell her. I'm going to watch it, but then I'm going to act like I watched it for the first time when she shows up. She'll never know.
She doesn't listen to this.
She doesn't listen to this at all. I'm glad we're doing this show. This is a step in a different direction for us, but I did find the show fascinating. If we watch like 2 and 3 and they're bad, I'm going to be disappointed, but I'll roll with it. But I don't know that it's such a strong pilot episode that I feel like they've got a plan. Like, a Juilliard playwright's not going to write one episode and then try and figure it out as he goes.
Yeah, I think I did. We were looking for new shows to do, and this is like a drama as opposed to like some of the comedies and things that we've done. So it's a little bit different, and they're hour long, so a little bit more content in each of these episodes. But I think it did get pretty well reviewed. I think some of them were, like the mystery, didn't like the mystery, but because there is so much mystery, I try to make it a point not to go too far down any rabbit holes of reviews. Like you said, it's dark. Okay, great. Thank you, reviewer. But you might get jerk reviewers on the internet that give away little things or little nuggets.
Sure.
So I'm always cautious too, especially now that we know the show is completely out. You might hear some things about it, but I do appreciate, I like doing these kind of shows that aren't just like, we're not doing Stranger Things. We're not doing like the really big, like blockbuster ones, which I don't know, maybe as podcasters we should because we'll have a bigger audience. But I think this is a very unique show that I think for those people that have been listening to us do some of our other shows, we do think this is probably up those folks' alley with kind of some of the content and drama that's in this show. So we're hoping everybody enjoys it and follows along with us.
I got fired up because I was watching the NBA playoffs and they did a commercial for this show. And they were like flashing it. And I was like, okay, yeah, no, I want to watch episode 2. But it took us forever to record this pod. So I haven't watched episode 2. But no, I'm interested. I guess, do you have any big theories? Do you have any big predictions? Other than, my prediction is that Perry is a serial killer and he's slowly going to kill everyone in the show and throw them in the hole. But any at this point, do you feel like you have any like strong threads other than it's like clearly a time travel? From my mind, maybe it's not clearly. There's some time travel element to this. You get thrown into the hole or you go through the hole, like transfer of time sort of thing. Other than that, do you have any big theories?
I don't think I do yet. I think there's a lot of characters that have the mystery. To your point, I think Autumn is definitely going to be some sort of catalyst, whether she's like a future version of somebody or somebody from the past, because it does seem like it can go both ways. We've only really seen it go forward with him putting his hand in and then seeing the very near future, but my assumption is that it does go back in time. What it might even do to Trevor, who was seemingly dead and thrown into the hole, does that character still around in some form or fashion? Could be kind of interesting. Say the next episode, you just see Trevor walking around.
3 days later.
Weird and interesting.
3 days later, he comes back.
I don't know if I've got anything quite yet. I think the show, again, this is why I really enjoyed this pilot, because I think they did a really good job of introducing not just like one or two threads to pull on, but I think there's a lot of interesting characters that you can dive into. So I'm with you. I hope to me, like, sticking the landing is important. That's what really makes a good show that you're going to remember and talk about. But I do appreciate a show that has a good ride. Like, even if it doesn't land the final episode, if it's still a fun ride and I'm enjoying the mystery and the central stuff of the show, I enjoy it. I'm also kind of a sucker for like really good cinematography, and I thought this show had it in spades.
Sure.
The way it like messed with like focus was really cool, where he's like on his horse in the foreground and then they stay focused in the foreground while he's just like disappearing in focus or out of focus in the background. I thought was really cool. So there's a lot of cool things like that, and obviously the scenery and just the gorgeous beauty of this ranch in Wyoming and the mountains and the like hillsides. It's such a cool show to watch.
Right. No, I'm with you. I agree. This is a Stephen King version of Yellowstone, which I think people watch Yellowstone just for that show is bonkers, by the way. All right. Well, thank you. Those of you that have joined us for this, you can email us your theories, but we only want to hear them if you've only watched episode 1. If you've gone beyond this, you're not part of the team right now.
Hold on to those theories.
Hold on to those theories. You can email us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. Tom runs our Twitter. He does a great job. That is at Team Binge. We will be here next week to talk about episode 2, which I'm going to watch 30 seconds after I hit record or end recording on this. But I have been Julian.
And I've been Cowboy Tom. Yeehaw, everybody.
Oh, I hate you so much. No, I love you. You're a great friend, and we will see y'all next week. Oh, y'all. I said y'all. Son of a gun.
You said gun.
All right. Good night.